Let's
No. Hello, everybody.
let's do this. Let's do this, Cliff. Hello, everybody. I'm Justin. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, Amazon books, movies, games, TV shows. We've been doing this for 8 years, over 450 some episodes. I don't know if that sets us a record. We've probably put more words around Lord of the Rings than Tolkien wrote in his lifetime. I don't know. But I'm joined by Clifford Broadway, the producer, writer of Ringers, Lord of the Fans, and a featured extra in Return of the King. And today's episode is going to hopefully answer our number 2 question about Amazon's TV show, which is the number 1 question is, when is the trailer? Which I don't know yet. Number 2 question is, how can I be on the TV? How can I be in Lord of the Rings? So, you know what? We got a panel of people that were in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and we can talk about it.
Yes, we can.
Let's bring in Cliff.
Hello there. Nice to see you, Justin, and nice to see everybody else in the world. Welcome aboard to theonering.net. And as we open the show, I realized that there's a whole lot of talk and stuff going on about the story synopsis that we had got to share. We're very lucky to share that with everyone. And in the world of fandom, the wide range of speculation has just gone full throttle across the interwebs, trying to figure out and to suss out all these interesting details that we can. As it turns out, we know that New Zealand is COVID-free, and they're actually putting out the word that they need people to go and get cast in the show and get to work on the show. They're going to be working down there for several years down in New Zealand on this new Amazon Studios Lord of the Rings show. So it's really exciting to actually bring the world of speculation, which is, that's a world we love to play in that. We love to play in that sandbox. Believe me, we do. But it's especially nice to talk to some wonderful people who have actually been there, who have been on the set, in front of the camera for Peter Jackson's 6 movie trilogy. And so we have practical, real-world, real-life experience to share with all of you wonderful folks.
That's right, Cliff. But before we do that, I got some late-breaking news that just came in across our desks today.
No, wait a minute. I'm ready to introduce our guests.
I know, but I just got the DM. I just got this.
You're telling me. Why don't you ever tell me these things before the show starts?
Because it just came in.
Why don't you tell me these things before the bloody show starts?
All right, I'm gonna tell you right now. Unfortunately, okay. I hate to start off the show with a bit of a downer, but
oh no,
our friend Doug Adams, the author of the music of Lord of the Rings, is now reporting that the soloist performer that is the first voice you hear in Lord of the Rings, in the darkened theater, in the darkened screen, when you hear that soft elvish monochord performance, that is the voice of Sonia Slany. She's just passed away today.
Oh.
So we have lost the
very
first
sad news.
And one of the greatest vocalists in Middle Earth history. She, of course, was involved in almost all the choral arrangements and choral singing across all the Lord of the Rings films. But she is the very first voice before you hear Galadriel whispering. You hear Sonia Slany's voice, and she
really her voice is the most distinct, and because we're looking at darkness, and Peter was insistent on keeping the audience in darkness for several seconds, and you do hear her beautiful lilting voice in the distance before Kate Blanchett brings actual Sindarin, actual Elvish. Wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. We've actually lost the voice of the ring as well, haven't we? And what a bummer. Well, I'll tell you what, that's very good of Doug to let us know so that the community can share condolences to her family and the surviving members of her family, and how she will forever be remembered, forever in cinema history. And yet, surprisingly, very few people, except us hardcore nerds, would know her name. Wow.
Let me see if I can bring up a audio clip. Hopefully, we don't get copyrighted. Let me try to play this.
Oh, well, that's too easy. Okay. Okay. Is Mr. Chris Sate with us in our background, in our production booth?
Not today, but I don't know if that came through, but that was the soft voice that comes in at the very, very, very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. So our condolences to the family. Thank you, Doug Adams, for bringing that to our attention.
Yes.
And we've got so many updates to the production of Amazon's billion-dollar Lord of the Rings. We know where they're filming. We have an idea of what they're filming. But I'm getting all that stuff together for a big episode next week. This week is all about background extras, and we've had a huge conversations over background casting notices over the last few months. So let's talk through some people that have been in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. First up, we've got Steven. Let me bring you on screen. You, sir, were in which movies?
I was in the Two Towers. You see me in the Two Towers, but worked on the Two Towers and Return of the King. I was there for the what they called the pickups. So they filmed a bulk. Well, they filmed the. Everyone knows the story. They claimed that they filmed all three movies kind of at once. What they really did was mostly film Fellowship of the Ring and then showed New Line Cinema and managed to get a bunch more money to finish the other two. But I was part of a casting call that went out when they were filming those pickups for the Two Towers, which was, from what I understand, was about half the movie that they still had to shoot when we were doing that. And yeah, so over a period of about 2 years was just glorified walking coat hanger for 2 straight years.
And you're not just like one in a big battle scene. You are clearly visible on screen, are you not?
Yeah. Do you want me to? I can tell you a pretty. I'll tell you a pretty funny story about that. So I was part of a group of. We were all local actors. I'm a stand-up comedian. In New Zealand, I'm actually quite well known for being on television doing comedy and stuff. A show called 7 Days over there that's been quite popular for a long time. But back in 2001, I was kind of a nobody stand-up comic and had a lot of free time during the day. And as comedians do, you try to throw your hat into the ring for anything that is performance-oriented, especially if there's money there. And the guy whose improv troupe I worked for also had a casting agency called the Pro Actors, and he said, "Look, if you want to go make $150 a day, they need people to basically stand there and be soldiers on Lord of the Rings." And I was like, "Oh, this is fantastic!" Like, the first film had come out; it was a really awesome opportunity to be involved. So I was part of a group of about 12 or 15. Local actors, local Wellington actors and performers and comedians who, what we all had in common was we all had long hair. And they needed, for a couple of weeks of shooting, Gondorian Rangers, Faramir's kind of gang of Rangers who were kind of hiding out with him. And obviously all of us there's one objective. When you're not wearing a rubber mask in Lord of the Rings, which for a lot of the extras, most of the time you've either got a Gondorian helmet on which covers your whole face, or you're wearing an orc mask. So to be a Gondorian Ranger already, your odds of getting your face on camera are really high. If you watch The Two Towers, there's a scene where Frodo and Sam show up to Osgiliath with Faramir and they have Gollum in tow. And it's two groups of rangers meeting each other. One of them is a group that's behind Faramir. The other group are behind a ranger who I believe Peter Jackson created for the movie. His name was Madril, and he was played by John Bates, who's a famous actor from New Zealand. I don't think he's in the books. I do think he was like a plot device for the films. But in any case, he has a group of rangers behind him. Faramir's got a group of rangers behind him. We kind of walk up to each other, as groups, and they have a discussion. So what they needed the Gondorian Rangers to do was arrange ourselves in the background for Faramir's shot. They got all of us to kind of stand in a group behind Faramir. And then after we filmed all of Faramir's lines, obviously we switch over. And the idea was the people at the back move to the front and the people at the front move to the back. And we stand behind Madril. And they film his lines. I, luckily, managed to get my face right in there over Faramir's shoulder. So if there's a A1 position to get your face in, I located it. But you got to understand, these were a group of really good friends of mine, a lot of whom were actors who were really annoyed that this stand-up comedian had managed to get there. One of them is a guy called Ben Barrington, who's now actually a very well-known actor in New Zealand and Australia. He's had some major roles in some huge dramas in both Australia and New Zealand. What a lot of people don't know about Ben Barrington is that he tried so hard to get into shot when we were filming Faramir's angle. And he thought he had been unsuccessful. So when we went to film Madril's side of the scene, he tried just as hard to get into the shot. And there's a legend and a rumor in Wellington acting circles. And if you go and watch The Two Towers, you can see evidence of it, that in the editing suite, Peter Jackson threw something at the screen, because when you look at that scene, there's very clearly the same guy standing on both sides, because he managed to get on the other side of Faramir from where I am, he just manages to kind of get his face in shot. And then when you cut to Madril's side of it, there's the same guy kind of leaning out, trying to get in as well. And obviously, if you're putting something together in an editing suite, you're watching the same thing over and over and over again, so it became clear this guy's there. And if you watch it and if you do a Google search of Ben Barrington so that you can kind of know what his face looks like.
Well,
it's clear as day.
Enough teasing people at home. Let me see if I can bring that picture up. Boom, there it is on screen right now. This is a screenshot of the tweet that you made that got you on my radar. So there's screenshots of you, but the context of the tweet was your ex-girlfriend is making fun of you in Lord of the Rings for the 9th year in a row. Talk me through that.
You got to understand, I'm from New Zealand. I live in the United States now, and here in the United States, whenever you mention to people that you were an extra in Lord of the Rings, which my wife loves to do because she knows it makes me uncomfortable. People think it's incredible. People here think it's amazing. They think that they talk to me I've won international awards for stand-up comedy, but no one in this country cares about that. The fact that I was in Lord of the Rings for 10 seconds, they seem to think is the greatest thing I'll ever achieve. In New Zealand, it is the exact opposite. If you were in Lord of the Rings in New Zealand, there is no clout associated with that whatsoever. In fact, it's embarrassing. And my ex-girlfriend, who I've got an incredible relationship with, by the way, that was the most. I tweeted that out, thinking that my mates who follow my Twitter feed would get a laugh out of it. because a lot of them know her and a lot of them know me. I didn't think that it would wind up getting 20,000 likes or whatever and ping-ponged all over the internet. And I had all of these. The most alarming thing about that was all of these guys, these weird guys who seemed to think that my masculinity needed a pep talk because of it. And were like going, don't look, if your ex-girlfriend's doing stuff like that, she's just jealous. Which made me laugh because I was like, no one in New Zealand is jealous of someone being in Lord of the Rings. It's not. Literally everybody was. There was a military draft where if you were my height, you didn't really have a choice. It was like your patriotic national duty to go and stand in Peter's film and wear some elvish clothing. But for the last 9 years, my ex-girlfriend has routinely posted screenshots of me in the Two Towers and just her laughing underneath it, and then all of the replies and comments on Facebook underneath that are all of the friends that we have both accumulated throughout our lives who know me, all also laughing, because to them, they're watching this. It's the moment just before the Nazgul show up. Like, it's one of the most dramatic moments in the Two Towers, right? Like, it's that kind of calm before the storm moment where, the camera kind of zooms in on Frodo and he's sort of feeling all weirded out, and the Nazgul are about to come hooning in overhead and everything goes to custard. And all of my mates have to sort of, right as they're being, like Peter Jackson's weaving this beautiful moment of drama that's about to suck you in and then pop and explode all over the screen. But just before that explosion comes, they're like, oh, there's Steve, I guess, standing there. That's Steve ruined it again, everyone. So I've constantly ruined one of the most dramatic parts of the Two Towers for a lot of people. And I've been consistently trolled about it for a long time.
Steve Wrigley, it is such an absolute delight to have you here telling this wonderful story. And I really have to ask. I
just want to apologize. I've been in quarantine for 9 months out here in New York, have forgotten how to talk to people, and just kind of tend to sort of keep doing it until someone stops me.
No, you please do. In fact, I'd let you run away with this entire hour if you could. But what I want to say is, with your ex-girlfriend constantly doing this LOL at your expense, I've got to ask, are you never, ever going to get your old records back? I mean, it doesn't look likely, man. It really doesn't look likely. I mean, gosh.
And here's like, in New Zealand is such a small place as well that people don't understand that, like, you have to have a healthy relationship with your ex-partners. Yeah. You have no choice, because after we broke up several years later, we wound up flatting together for 3 years in the same house, because that's just how it works, right? And she was at my wedding. Like, you just have to. It's such a small place that having a good mutual relationship with your exes is good. Having said that, no, I don't think. Well, I don't really. I think it was 2001 that we were together. I think the only thing she has of mine is an old Slipknot CD that I'd rather pretend I never owned.
Right? Oh, okay, yeah, leave that behind.
I think she's got all my Limp Bizkit cassette tapes, but she can have those.
Oh man,
no cassette tape left behind. Okay.
Well, these are some great stories, but we've got another guest with us. He's been on the show before. You've seen him in The Hobbit. Dallas Barnett. Let's hit that unmute button and bring you in. Dallas, how are you? Oh, he's almost there.
Hi, how you going?
Oh, there he is. There's Dallas.
So,
hello.
So our first question to you, Dallas, you've just heard the story of, like, everybody in New Zealand was in Lord of the Rings. Was it that as easy to get on The Hobbit?
Everything that Stephen has said about everything New Zealand is correct. I'm not nowhere near as funny as Stephen, but everything he said is absolutely dead on. The thing is, I actually auditioned to play the Pale Orc in the original Hobbit series, and didn't get it, obviously. And I was like, well, there's another movie coming, so I'll have another chance at that. And my agent calls me up one day, and she goes, "What are you doing right now? Can you be in Wellington by morning?" And I'm like, "Sure. What do I got to go down there for?" And she goes, "Peter Jackson saw your audition and wants to put you in the beginning of the movie. They're at a loss for what to do at the start of the Desolation of Smaug. So he's written a little bit for you. Do you know who Bill Ferny is?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "My agent said, well, you'll be playing his father, Bill Ferny Sr." And I'm sitting there eating a burrito and screaming. And people thought I was joking or something like that. I was at a burrito joint. And so I went down there, and it was brilliant, man. It was the three big heads, Peter Jackson, and everybody was in the wardrobe room where they were building my costume around me. And we're talking like 40 pounds of leather that they're just and talking and laughing and having a good time. And Peter says, "Now, do you mind if we shave your eyebrows?" I was like, "No disrespect here, Sir Peter, but if it'll get me in the Lord of the Rings, you can shave whatever you want to shave." And
Did you say that? Did you actually say that?
yes, I did. I was nervous, I'm down for a full back and crack wax, whatever you want to do. It'll get me in the Hobbit, and do it. So they shaved my head, they shaved my eyebrows, they trimmed this mess up, and stuck me in front of the camera. And that was a lot of fun. I've never been an extra in anything. I've always shot my shot as a full on at least supporting actor. And my agency doesn't do extras anyway, so I'm trying to get on everything I can. I've just done 2 Netflix and a BBC here just since June in New Zealand. It's hopping down here, mate.
That sounds very good.
Tell us all about that. Not really. I don't need to hear it right now about your weather. You mentioned that you had initially auditioned for the Pale Orc, and as everyone knows, they actually filmed a prosthetic Bolg and Azog, and then later on replaced them with digital versions and brought in some great motion capture actors at the last minute. I can't imagine the feeling of an actor booking the big bad Azog and then doing the whole role and then getting replaced.
Yeah, well, I mean, John Toohey played Bolg, and we've worked together several times. John's a great guy, and he was a little unhappy with the fact that they replaced him with a digital thing. And he goes, "Look, you're a featured extra. You actually had more time on screen than I did."
Well,
and I'm like, well,
if we're talking about people getting replaced, that is nowhere near as bad as what happened to a very good friend of mine, my buddy Ben, who also was trying really hard to get in, and it didn't make it into the cinema cut, but in the director's cut of The Two Towers, if you remember it, there's a scene where they're all celebrating. I believe the Gondorians are celebrating in Osgiliath, and Boromir hands Faramir a horn of mead or a beer or something. And my buddy Ben gets called over, and he's going to hand 2 tankards to Boromir, and Boromir is going to give one of these tankards to Faramir, right? So we're not, outside of speaking roles, these are the moments that you want to get, is outside of like getting something fantastic where they're actually building armor for you, and you're going to, be at the start of a movie and they've literally written a part for you. If you're on the day, if they go, "You're going to hand the beers to this guy," that's a huge deal. So my buddy Ben is so excited, but after 3 attempts to hand a beer to Sean Bean, Peter Jackson walks on set and goes, "No, I'm sorry. This just the way that you're handing him the beer, it's just not working. Let's just get a barrel. We'll replace this guy with a barrel, put the beers on the barrel, and Sean, you just pick the beers up off the barrel and give them to Faramir." So every couple of years, people make sure that they get that photo of the barrel and just go, so remember that time you got replaced by, I believe it was a barrel actually, that they cut you out of the film. So being replaced by a CGI version of a performance that you did is bad, but just wholesale being swapped out for a piece of wood, I think it's slightly more embarrassing.
That's a great story, Steve. That's hilarious.
Hey, Cliff.
I mean,
Cliff, I got to ask you, you round out our background extras conversation because you yourself were in Return of the King, weren't you? Like, where can people find you?
yes, actually, I was embedded to be a secret journalist, a secret spy, and I wasn't even supposed to be on camera. That's what was so funny about it. I mean, I was trying to stay low profile so that I could get some, snooping and look around the set and just take some stories on the side with some of the people and some of the stunties who were wonderful. I made so many great friends. And I'm in the scene in The Return of the King called The Sacrifice of Faramir, where him and his boys are preparing to leave Minas Tirith, and Gandalf is telling him, "Your father loves you, Faramir. He'll remember it before the end." And then right after that, they walk out of the gate. And then there's a cutaway to several people, citizens of Gondor, Minas Tirith, who are standing out there on the parapets, looking out over the wall. And there were two scenes that I had to film that day. One of them was standing on the wall and doing nothing, and the other was running around in the middle of the city in abject terror while flying Nazgul were coming over us. And that was way, way, way more difficult and way more problematic. And I did very, very poorly. I'm sure Steve might know something about that himself, running away from invisible Nazgul. But as it turns out, I didn't have that long hair. I did not have that long hair at all. And I had made friends with Salah Baker, and we were just interested in drinking all night and doing karaoke, at the little steamboat, at the steamboat bar down there in, off Courtenay, you know the one. And that's all I wanted.
Time.
Yes, you've been there. So the next morning, I'm nursing the worst hangover, and I look at the front desk, and there's a tiny note that Salah had left, and it said, "Sauron needs you." Sauron needs you. Call him. And so I called him up, and he said, "All right, we've got to get you done to casting right now." And then there were all these conversations of, "What are you doing here? You don't even have a work permit. You don't even have a work permit, son. What?" And I said, "No, I'm not really supposed to be working." But then she said, "Oh, you're from the OneRing.net. Well, then come over here." And they put me into fittings, and then they put me in another tent, and they realized that they'd have to give me a helmet that had all the hair extensions coming out of the back of the helmet. And so there I was, working with the actor who played Irolas. What is his name? He's got the cape. He's got the cape coming over his shoulder and his armor, and that's why he looks distinct as a Gondorian soldier, because nobody else has this beautiful fabric cape. And he has a couple of lines of dialogue, but I got to stand right next to him, and the sound speaker, the PA system, had this voice constantly telling us, "Look concerned, look really worried. No, more worried than that." And my face was completely obscured by this helmet, and there was no way anybody could tell that if there were tears in my eyes or anxiety on my face. There was no way. And then the camera swooped right in front of me on this crane, and I did not realize how bloody close I was to that camera until it was right there in front of me. And all of this accidental mischief came together because it was privately amusing for Salah Baker. Salah thought this was all fun and games to make me nervous as hell, but it's to put me in front of the camera. And I thought it was the most wonderful experience just to go out there to the upper hut and just to look around and poke around in the set. but nothing is worse than standing there for hours and holding your pee when you've got to, and you can't go, you cannot leave from where you're at, and the camera has to reset and come back and swoop right across your eyes again and then again, and it was really, really wild.
These
but
are
I'll tell you,
these are some great stories. Stephen, before we get to a group question, Stephen, were you on set when Faramir looks up and says, "Nazgul"?
Yes, and again, my friend Ben Barrington, who you have to understand, we were 21 years old at the time. Ben Barrington, the actor I was mentioning before, who got on both sides of the shot, had just graduated drama school, Toi Whakaare Drama School in Wellington, right? And he was hoping that being on Lord of the Rings was his big, like, he's going to get discovered here. So when we got to the bit where it was Nazgul, an interesting, like, technical thing, they had Thong, the small actor who was the stand-in for Frodo. It was really technical because we had to run back and forth, right? And we had to be aware of where Frodo was going to be, because obviously, you know, they filmed everything differently and then digitally put him in there because they were supposed to be so much smaller than us, right? So we had to run these really specific lines, and what we were told to do by the first AD, you very rarely actually heard from Peter Jackson if you were an extra. Everything was kind of communicated through the assistant director, but was to kind of like duck down and be looking up because these Nazgul are swooping overhead. So our friend Ben Barrington, fresh out of drama school, was like, "This is it. This is my moment." And he kept kind of jumping out right in front of the camera shot, doing the most dramatic, dynamic, looking for the Nazgul you've ever seen, just with abject terror on his face, his body language splayed out to the east and west, right? And then we hear after a couple of those, you actually hear Peter Jackson yell, "Cut!" which was very rare to actually hear him talk. And on his megaphone, you hear Peter Jackson say, "Excuse me, that Gondorian Ranger who's doing all of the acting? The Gondorian Ranger doing all the acting?" And Ben, he's so proud, stood up waiting to get his compliment. And Peter Jackson goes, "Could you just stop acting? That'd be great, thanks. Just a little less acting from you. All right, let's go again."
That's amazing. Hey, just a technical note. I've muted Dallas because we had some feedback. So when you start answering the next question, just remember to unmute. But this question is for both of you. First, we'll go to Steve, and then we'll go to Dallas because he's an working actor right now. How hard was it to get involved? Like, what is the process? Were casting auditions? Was it word of mouth? Like, hey, you had some friends who were just like, hey, you need to show up over here. Like, do you need work permits? Like, was it only locals you saw hanging out on set? What can you go into that?
Yeah. So, particularly when they were doing the pickups for the Two Towers and Return of the King, they needed warm bodies and heaps of them. I think the most people, I feel like someone said 300 folks on set, which would sound about right, was when we were filming for Two Towers. It was for Return to the King, when the orc armies are amassed outside Gondor. Because Peter Jackson was really specific about not wanting to have this, it's one of the most breathtaking shots in the film when they look out over the battlements of Gondor, and there's just hundreds and hundreds of orcs kind of all standing there. To not have those all be digital, but to have them be people, to give it the movement of it to feel really organic. So we did what was called quadrants, where you had like about 300 of us, all with orc prosthetics on, standing in front of a green screen on a huge field. And for that, they did like big kind of catapult. They the casting agents in Wellington, I think, was all hands on deck. They were just scrounging the place for people. And the whole reason I actually met my wife and now live in Western New York is because there were two girls there, the Crummett sisters, were two young ladies who had flown to New Zealand from Los Angeles specifically to be in Lord of the Rings. They both wound up marrying into the country. I met my wife through them.
Wait,
my wife
Crummett, like Lindsay Crummett?
Yeah, Lindsay, yeah.
No, like the 3D modeling,
Yep.
talented Lindsay Crummett, who we've seen
Correct.
at Weta Workshop's booth at Comic-Con for the last few years because she designed Galadriel and a lot of the high-end $1,000 collectibles. Crummett?
The very same young lady.
That's your sister-in-law.
No, she's not my sister-in-law. Well, I guess she's like a spiritual sister-in-law. But her and her sister introduced me to the lady who is now my wife, who was also an American who was in Wellington. That's a side story. Lindsay Crummett is she? I mean, she's an amazing story because essentially they came to New Zealand to be extras on Lord of the Rings, and she was, every time we did heads off or whatever what we would call it, we would take our orc heads off and we'd have a break. She always bought everywhere with her a sketchbook and would sit in the mess tent while the rest of us were all sitting around playing card games and stuff. Lindsay Crummett with half an orc costume on, and we had they painted these black circles under our eyes so that when we put the hoods on, it all matched up, and you'd see this young American girl in a corner, huddled over a sketchbook, drawing monsters, drawing caricatures. She was obsessed with it. And yeah, that drive that she had, she eventually found her way into Weta's Workshop. But she was an extra. She was an orc in a lot of the movies, and her sister, Elizabeth, right at the end of Return of the King, where Arwen and Viggo Mortensen's guy, Aragorn, when they go to kiss each other right at the end, she is standing right in the middle of them, looking at the two of them as they go to kiss. And this was a huge moment for her to finally kind of get into the film. But those two, Lindsay and Elizabeth Crummett, are two girls who flew over from California, and they didn't have work visas. They basically managed to, I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations on this is well up in New Zealand. But they both kind of wrangled their way into working and being on that film. I mean, there's an incredible...
So do you think that's still possible now in the year of our Lord 2021?
I honestly, I think if you're not currently in New Zealand, if your feet aren't on the ground in New Zealand, I would say at the moment that you should count your chances of being able to successfully get over there and get into the Lord of the Rings being almost nil, right? Like,
that's fair. That is fair.
Yeah, no, if you're not on the ground here in New Zealand already, what Steve said, it is almost an impossibility to get through. The borders are closed. The only way you're getting in is a residency or a citizenship.
And
the
even then,
state that the productions have to offer jobs to New Zealanders first before they look offshore. So that's strike two. To get into New Zealand right now, you've got to do 2 weeks managed quarantine, isolation and quarantine. That's $6,000 that the production will have to pay for you.
Exactly.
To even get to the country, you've got to have work visas. You've got to have tick. If you're not here already, wait for season 4. America, Canada, UK, get your shit together, mask up, isolate, get the vaccination, get this stuff over with as soon as we can, because we miss you down here. We really do. Well, I've been here 20 years now. I got here at the end of 2001 and worked as you do the retail junk jobs that everybody has to do to get started. I always wanted to be an actor. I'd given up on it by this point. And I've been doing voice work for, well, since the 90s. I got a voice agent down here, and I've been doing voice work for since 2001 here in New Zealand. I was sitting in my agent's office one day, and the casting director for Shortland Street walked in, and she goes, "Oh my God, I've been looking for you for 10 years. Can you act?" I'm like, "I don't know, maybe." So she hired me to take out the majority of the main cast for the longest running soap opera in New Zealand history. And the rest is pretty much history, I guess.
Oh, you're referring to Shortland Street, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And I started getting roles and started building and did some starring stuff and a couple of features and stuff like that. And my agent said, "Hey, you want to go audition for Lord of the Rings?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." So she sent me the I am audition, and I'm a fat prick, so I didn't get that. They would have had to really invest in some muscle suits for me. Um, the actor that got it did a wonderful job, I think. Um, But I'm happy because I got actually more FaceTime on screen than he did, so that all worked out in the end, really. And I'm hoping that Amazon will be doing some more casting here pretty soon. I've already told my agent, supporting her better. I think I've earned a shot. So.
Do you
Absolutely.
think
Absolutely.
A lot of the rumors and stuff that we've been running at the One Ring have come from casting casting auditions and like extras casting postings on websites, and there are a few extras casting websites for New Zealand where they're asking for elvish looking people with high cheekbones comfortable with nudity, or short, stocky, interesting looking people, people with a limp leg, or missing limbs, or you absolutely qualify there. I noticed with your eye, Dallas. So are these extras casting postings, are they accurate? I mean, should we rely on these aren't false flags, right? Like, they need high cheekboned people. They do.
Yeah, the official extras come through an agency called BGC, Background Talent. Sarah Valentine is a good friend of mine. She does a wonderful job. They do the bulk of it. There are some other agencies involved. Anything that is advertising for overseas extras, ignore them. It is impossible to get in to do anything unless you're already on the ground. And I hate to break all the hearts, but that's the reality of it. Wait for season 4, wait for season 5, isolate, wear your mask, get vaccinated, get your shit together.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say I'm graduating college soon, and my aunt says she will give me the $6,000 it costs to quarantine for 2 weeks to fulfill my dream of going to New Zealand as a graduation gift. What are the chances? What are the possibilities going over there as a tourist, and then they're going to be filming Lord of the Rings between now and June? Is it any chance? No?
I see you shaking your head, Dallas.
You got to have residency or citizenship to even get past the border to get your visa. You have to be able to show citizenship or residency to New Zealand, or have an exemption. And exemptions happen regularly here. They had a bunch of stuff for the Robert Downey Jr. show that I was on, that they brought in American and Canadian directors and directors of photography and stuff like that. But those are very specialized kind of roles that people in New Zealand, the pool here is short. with those. I mean, we've got a great industry here. We've got a lot of infrastructure. We've got a lot of talented people. But sometimes there's somebody that, say, Robert Downey Jr. wants this specific person on the show because of their style or because of their because he likes their work or whatever. He can then go ahead and request an exemption. Or no key do it. The job, and we got 5 million orcs. You know, that's the thing. Like Stephen was saying, it's a military draft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you come into New Zealand and you're expected to be on Shortland Street, Lord of the Rings, and Xena.
Well, let me ask Stephen.
Go ahead, Steve. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to throw in there, if you do find yourself in a situation where you get into anything, if it's Lord of the Rings or you know, you've always wanted to just be involved in a film and you think like being an extra is the way to do it, the key thing to remember is if you do get that foot in the door, if you want to get your face, if you want to be part of the hustle to get your face on camera because you're literally just a background extra crew, it's about volume of work. You have to be there for as many shoot days as possible to increase your odds of getting in shot. And if you ever are Lord of the Rings or a Game of Thrones type production, the key thing that I remember from 2001 when we were all involved in these projects is you have to remember that you're there because the person who's in charge of casting has put you on the call sheet. And the best way to make sure that you're consistently coming back is that person is usually told at 9 a.m. in the morning on Monday that for tomorrow's shoot, they're going to need only 15 extras. So just get 15 extras booked. And then just before they're about to go home from work at whatever 9 o'clock as the shoot finishes, someone runs up to that person and says, the director has changed their mind. They actually need 150 people at 5:30 tomorrow morning, right? What you need to be, you need to be someone who is just easy and reliable, because that casting person has a mental checklist in their head of people they can quickly contact at like 9 p.m. on a Monday evening and know that they can have that person at 5:30 tomorrow morning, that person's going to be on time, and that they're going to be reliable. So you really are putting your entire life kind of on hold to not make much money, to kind of just be part of a giant pool of human resources that they can bring in.
Dallas, does that sound familiar, Dallas?
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, okay, I was born in the U.S. A long time ago. The thing is, you're getting, say, $200 a day for being an extra. I guess that's the rate now. I am taxed in New Zealand for those $200 because I'm an American citizen. The only country in the world that taxes based on citizenship, not on where you live. I'm paying U.S. taxes on that as well. So I'm walking out of there with probably, professional, reliable, don't have people on set going, well, this guy's a real problem. I don't want to.
There was a guy on the Two Towers who was giving notes to. He was like, went over to the AD and I remember this. He went over to the AD and was like, "Hey, I just a bit worried because we're actually we're in Return of the King now, and the orcs that were bred at this point, some of them were actually bred with the Uruk-hai. So you're telling all of us that we kind of don't like the sunlight, but actually we kind of can exist in sunlight. And I feel like the directions that you're giving to the extras aren't actually correct, and maybe you should check with Peter about that." And he was never on set again.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
It'd be like someone being on, like, the set of Star Wars and going up to J.J. Abrams and going, "Can we just have a chat? Like, I know you've got stuff to do, but can we just have a chat about where you're kind of going with Luke Skywalker here? Because I'm not sure.
Do you know what? I was actually afraid, Steve, that I was going to be in that position at some point. But no, I mean, not. That is absolutely insane. That is so hilarious. You know, I'm really glad that you said at the top of this conversation that it's not really a badge of pride for, you know, for the New Zealand actors to have been in the Rings trilogy, because people were almost unwillingly roped into it. Like, that's the joke. I mean, I know that's the joke. But
I
yeah.
mean, even with myself, I'll tell people, look, I play this role in AFK web series before I'll bring up the Hobbit, because around here, it's just like, oh, you were in the Hobbit too?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I mean, after I got put in hero armor, I realized they're not putting me just in the cloth armor to be 10 rows back, further in the back. They put me in actual heavy plate mail, chain mail, with a real hero shield and a real pike in my hand. And I thought to myself for several hours, who is that poor, unfortunate soul who would have been here instead of me? If it weren't for, you know, Sala Baker pulling the strings to get me there. And then I realize now, you're telling me this 19 years later, that I shouldn't have felt bad at all, but it was really okay to be able to be in that spot at that time. I'm really feeling glad.
We're getting a ton of great feedback from the chat room, some great comments and questions. The first rule of being an extra, no feedback, don't talk, out of turn. In fact, don't talk, because in LA, if you make a noise, that's a different level of union fees that are required. So literally, your job is to not talk or make noise. Imran in the chat room says, this Steve guy is a legend. Lots of people asking, you probably have hours and hours of stories that you could tell.
You know what? After that tweet went viral, because like when I moved to the States, right? I moved here for very personal reasons, for family reasons, and I've been here for about 6 years now. And you know, I've been kind of doing stand-up here, but I'm not as well known here as I am in New Zealand. And I feel now like I've actually been doing it all wrong. And that what I should have done this entire time was just do the Comic-Con circuit and just do a 1 hour stand-up special called Extra Special, where all I do is tell stories of being on Lord of the Rings for an hour. I feel like there's a massive market for that I've got to go tap into.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Having done upwards of 20 conventions a year during the Hobbit years, yes, there is definitely a market. When conventions come back, I think we got to find a way to work you into our panel at New York Comic-Con or something like that. Because
by all means, you'd be more than welcome to come and join us anytime, you guys, both of you. Now, let me tell you, in my experience, I was at the Upper Hutt, which is considered a suburb of Wellington, but I don't know why you could call it that. It's a lot further out from Wellington. It's not a suburb of Wellington. It's just way out there.
It's not like it's part of Wellington the same way Mordor is part of Middle Earth. Like, it's there. You know, there's a big border around it.
Exactly.
Trying to keep the people in there and the people outside of it away from it.
Indeed, indeed. Now let me finish my question. Both of you guys were in different locations, and I should know this, but Dallas, where did they build the interior sets for the Prancing Pony? And Steve, where were you when all those Osgiliath scenes? Were you actually in Miramar? I'm just going to ask that real quick.
Yeah, they built the Prancing Pony. PJ took it out of storage. He had it there since the Lord of the Ring days. Rebuilt the Prancing Pony in a soundstage at Stone Street Studios. They had the weather machines working. They had the fans going to make it windy. They had fog machines. Everything was in a climate controlled space in Miramar.
Right. And Miramar technically is a suburb of Wellington. Technically.
Yes.
Miramar is a very fancy suburb in Wellington. It's the kind of place, it's where the soccer mums dwell. There are soccer mums there that do not sleep.
Well, I got one last question as we start to wrap up. This has been great information. Of course, COVID has affected everything and lots of hopes and dreams. But the thing I'm taking away is be great at something. And as we all know, Lord of the Rings, is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. 20 years since Fellowship was released. We're going to do some magic reunions this year. But Lord of the Rings and the appendices inspired lots of people to get into the film business and the effects business. And of course, we were just talking about Lindsay Crummett and her sister. So the question is, we've talked, this conversation has been about background extras, but a lot of people just want to work on Lord of the Rings. We've got 5 seasons, potentially 10 years of opportunity to do that. So Dallas, let's start with you first. What do you think the best way is to get into New Zealand to work on Lord of the Rings? Is it as a visual effects artist or some specialty?
I think probably would be by raft, and you'd want to approach the South Island. You'd want to approach at night, so there's no coast guard, and it's a long journey across the Pacific there. But just kind of sneak up on shore under cover of night and hope the border patrol don't get you.
Yeah. Best way I think to get into the industry down here is, take movement classes, get good at mocap, because Weta Workshop can take a wireframe of somebody in a mocap suit from anywhere in the world and put an orc around it. Voice actors, they're going to need voice actors to ADR the fight scenes. Get your foot in the door any way you can, so when the borders do open up again, you can go, look, I want to come down to Wellington. I want to work for Weta Workshop. I want to work for whichever prop maker, whatever. Get your foot in the door, get your name known. It'll happen. Until the borders open up, though, not a chance.
Your other option there would be to get Tinder and expand your Tinder circle to like thousands of miles so that it includes New Zealand, and then try and see if you can start a relationship with a New Zealander from wherever you are in the world, and try and develop that into a marriage, and then get residency and come in.
I just went through that. It's not as easy as it seems.
No, it's really not.
That's an even longer way around everything. There must be something in the water there, because every single person that I know that went to New Zealand to work on Lord of the Rings or Peter Jackson's King Kong has come back married or stayed there married to a local. So,
a funny story. I came down here in 1999 on vacation. I didn't know where New Zealand was until 1998.
It's just the accent, to be honest. I don't know what it is. I know a lot of guys like me who are just an absolute potato of a human being. There's no reason any woman would ever find any of me or any of the guys I know attractive, and yet somehow American women come to New Zealand, hear this voice, and then they just seem to forget about the rest of it. Like, they hear the way we talk and they forgive all of our shortcomings, and they wind up marrying us. I don't know how it works.
Here's the thing, Steve. Me having this very broad American accent and in the situation in the world anymore, I tell people I'm from Toronto.
That's wise. I would do that.
Yeah, the conversation just absolutely shifts. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, well, look, I've been in America for the last year. If I am able to travel back to New Zealand again, which, as I was saying to you guys before we started, I'm not going through an airport before I've had 2 jabs in the arm and the vaccines inside me. But if I ever am able to go home to New Zealand again, and any of my friends ask me where I've been for the last few years, I'm going to say, I've just been busy. I've just been hanging out in the shed.
Went to Sydney for 2 months.
Went to Sydney for a couple months, did a bit of a road trip.
Final
got a bit of an accent there. Were you in America? No, not going there.
We got one final question from the chat room. Steve, who's your favorite comedian? Stand up.
Of all time? It's hands down Eddie Izzard every single time. The man is an absolute legend, and his albums have never failed to disappoint. I've seen him live 3 times. Every time I've been to see him live, it's been an absolute treat. There's no one in the world who's even in the same class as Eddie Izzard.
Indeed. Eddie Izzard is absolutely amazing. I heard his voice in the new Dark Crystal series, and I fell over. He can do anything. He can do anything. What a talent. Here's the thing. A long time ago, when Lord of the Rings was the biggest phenomenon in pop culture, everybody wanted to expatriate and move to New Zealand. Everybody. In fact, a lot of the crew, a lot of the effects crew, some people from Weta, they bought land in New Zealand, and there was this whole big movement of people wanting to do this, Ernest Hemingway thing and be an expat and go live abroad in beautiful New Zealand. But I heard back then, 19 years ago, that the only real way you could really get citizenship is if you were a brain surgeon or a world-class engineer, because it was so difficult 19 years ago to get on that path, as they call it, a path towards emigrating and becoming a citizen of New Zealand. That's still the case, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you're getting in. I mean, there's always a way. I think we live in a world now where if you really want to go and live in New Zealand and have that be the country that you want to live in, I think that New Zealand ultimately is the kind of place where if you show up and you've got something to offer, you'll find a way to stay there. Like the Crummett sisters, Lindsay Crummett's a perfect example of someone who showed up there on a holiday visa or a tourist visa, and she just stayed there and stuck it out. And now, she's one of Weta Workshop's #1 people. It's you can work your way in if you've got the right attitude, I think. But,
I came in the way Steve was saying, through a relationship visa, and it was difficult back then, but it's much harder right now. My present wife is a Spanish citizen, and we just went through the relationship visa with her, and they wanted to see all of your Facebook chat record, and we showed it to them uncensored because why not? We got some looks out of that one, but it's very difficult to get into New Zealand right now. We have a housing crisis. We have COVID, obviously. Getting into New Zealand is difficult, and it's going to stay difficult for, I think, the foreseeable future. But I mean, if you got something to offer an industry in New Zealand or a culture in New Zealand, give it a shot. Immigration.govt.nz.
Well, the chat room says New Zealand really has it figured out. They're importing brain surgeons and exporting potato Steves.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate. I mean, you're not wrong. All right, they were very happy to get rid of me, right? But it also still hurts.
Well, as we wrap up the show, Cliff, I just wanted to say happy birthday, Cliff. Thank you for spending your birthday with us.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It actually It's actually my birthday already right now where Dallas is, but on my half of the world, I haven't gotten there yet. But yes, tonight at midnight, I turn another year better. Lucky me.
Happy birthday,
Lucky me.
Marshmallow.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Well, this has
You know,
been...
this is...
Go ahead.
I was
Cliff.
just going to say, this has been amazing to have both of you guys here with both of us, and thank you for being so quick and spontaneous to throw in to the conversation today. It's fantastic, really.
Anytime.
They're honored to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Always. Justin, do you have more rumors to close the show with?
I have stuff to talk about next week, but this has been a wonderful conversation. This is Torn Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific. We're streaming live from 3 time zones today, and who knows what will happen next week. We've got so much gossip and information to give you. Cliff, why don't you give us a sign-off?
I will be very glad to do that. Welcome to America, Steve. It's great to have you here. Dallas, I hope to come down there sometime and do some more secret reporting. Secret. I'd love to come down there and share a pint with you. Everybody, listen to what Dallas said. Wear your masks, behave yourselves, keep yourselves in check. We are almost around the bend. We are almost there. And you can go and watch the prince, the frog and the princess, and sing that song, I'm almost there, and keep singing it, because we are almost there, everybody. We're almost there. So it's an absolute pleasure to have all these people here with us, and to the chat room and all the international fans around the world. Thank you for staying up late tonight, joining us. I'm going to have a birthday pint later on, a tangerine India Pale Ale tonight at midnight. It's going to be so good. And thank you, everyone, for your well wishes and for being with us. Until next time, until next Tuesday at 5 o'clock p.m., we're going to have more mischief, more news and gossip for the world of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and The Silmarillion. And until then, good night and good luck, or rather, buenas noches y buena suerte. Bye, everyone.